G'day guys, it's Ben and Simon. Welcome to the Pumped on Property show.
We're back in action.
And I'm actually super excited or pumped about this one today. Now, we're going to be talking about the 4 stages of investing. The first stage being accumulating those assets that are going to make you financially free and give you an amazing life filled with choices in the future. The second stage isn't as much fun. We call it consolidation, which is really the paying off debt phase. But the cool thing about that phase is it's when your choices start to come into play. You can choose to continue to do what you're doing in that phase, or you can start doing something different, which I definitely did. And then we get to the freedom stage, which is when you've got enough money coming in passively to walk away from work and to cover your basic living expenses plus a little bit more. And then some people like to get back to the start of it. I'm one of those people, and start the 4th phase, which is moving on to wealth. So not just getting your food bill and your housing bill covered, but also that trip overseas a year that you want, or whatever else it is that you're working towards.
Yeah, hell yeah. We've got our trip planned down to the Melbourne wave pool. We've got to throw in one of them every single year,
Send a message out to a few of the boys. I think we've got 14 or 15 of them locked in
Standard,
now, which is crazy. I'm super excited. So what's our plan, man?
Oh, dude. So we're going to cruise down on the Friday afternoon. And there's this wave pool down in Melbourne called Urban Surf, and it's literally right next to the airport. It's got like a left and right hander. I went down there a couple of weeks ago with my partner, and for a surprise trip, it was just all time. You get like at least 12, 13 waves every single session. They're like 80 meters long.
Wow.
Multiple turns on every single wave. There's like this setting that's a gnarly barrel as well. I didn't actually get a chance to try that one out. I'm like, that one will get the heart rate up.
We did this trip though. This next one coming.
Yeah, we'll be locking one in on that for sure, and then just heading out for a bit of a night on the town in Melbourne.
It's been a while. I was saying to you, like, I really haven't even gone to a bar and had beers since, I think, like literally January 2020. So
yeah, we're talking about that with Gisela, and I'm like, far out. I can't believe. Like, I think that was after Super Bowl 2020.
Super Bowl 2020.
Far out. That was a big day.
Yeah, so like I'm looking forward to just a long lunch with all the boys, and then a bit of a pub crawl, go find some live music, and hopefully an Irish pub somewhere there in Melbourne, and have a good time.
Oh, you know there will be. Really keen to talk about today. I think, the purpose on talking about this investment journey is because, nothing's just going to happen, right? You've got to put in the work. You've got to understand the different phases. And I think, having that longer term idea, coming back and figuring out what is the next step that I need to be focusing on, and just making sure that you're doing the right things in the right phases as well, because otherwise you just never actually get there. We talk to so many investors, we talk to so many people, but I'm still yet to meet many people that are actually financially free.
Sure.
So it's like there's got to be a bit more of a method to the madness as opposed to just buying shit because we can.
The 2 hardest things in the first phase, which is accumulation, is one, saving that first deposit is an absolute nightmare.
It's a killer. It was, the hardest part of my last 4 years for sure. Is just, sticking to it. It's funny, I was recording a video with Ryan from On Property, and we were talking about, my position like 3-4 years ago before I started really focusing on getting that first property, and it was just such a grind, and even like some of the decisions to make during that phase, because you've got nothing at that point in time except more zeros in your bank account than you've ever really had before. And when you get there, you're like, oh, I could definitely go buy the new car, or I could definitely buy a new boat or a motorbike, whatever your little guilty pleasure is. Surfboards for myself. It's just, you need to have that like motivation to continue just going for it. And God, I'm grateful it all worked out nowadays. But in the beginning, I was just grinding.
It's a slow burn. Like, I remember the first time I saved my first little deposit the year that I finished uni. And then one of my mates, I've talked about this before, but he was up, we were walking to a waterfall, and he's like, you want to come to America next week? And I had just enough money in the bank to get myself into trouble. And so we booked a 10-day trip, and I literally spent the entire deposit on 10 days having a ball in America.
You got to do it though, right?
I had to send it. Like, I'd been living like an absolute bum on Centrelink plus working at a cafe or like cleaning bedrooms.
What did your father-in-law say when you got back?
He literally, he's like, "How was the trip?" And I'm like, "Good." And he's like, "You look guilty." And I'm like, "Yeah, I spent my entire deposit on the trip." And he's like, "You idiot, you're never gonna get anywhere." And then I'm like, "I'm gonna get somewhere, man. I've got a vision."
Yeah.
And then I went back and just grinded. Took on some extra jobs. Like I was working 2 jobs at that time. Plus I had a little consulting business to the Queensland government at the time outside of my job. And I was able to save that deposit again within about 6 months. Because back then you only needed a 5% deposit. So it was way easier than it is now.
Yeah, I was actually reading an update from CoreLogic this week, and they were talking about the first home buyers starting to drop off from the market a little bit at the moment.
Would you see what they did in the budget 2 days ago, though? Like they've just put fuel on that fire and they've extended all the first time stuff out.
Yeah, I did see all of that. So it's till September you can get the builder's grant now. It was meant to end September last year. Now it's September 2021, which is epic.
And it's like, let's chuck some petrol on this.
Yeah, they know how to reignite it, eh?
I know Ryan from On Property is just about to buy his first place, and he was talking to Paul, one of the brokers we know, who's an absolute legend and a previous client of ours, and he said that Ryan could basically put 5% deposit down at the moment. It's like really back to the good old days now.
Yeah, it's good. But property prices are obviously edging higher in most of the capital cities now as well. So it does sometimes take a bit of time for those first timers to save that deposit. I think a lot of people leaning on mum and dad bank. Fortunately, they're sitting on these $1 million assets if you're in Sydney or Melbourne, and at least that might make it a bit easier.
So the second hardest thing, I suppose, with the first stage, which is accumulating the properties, is having a plan. It's like, how do you know what you can do if you don't know what you want? And if you do know what you want, how do you design the strategy without knowing all of the different pieces? Like they're the 2 hardest things. I actually didn't have a clear plan in place until I bought my 7th property.
Yeah, it's
full
crazy.
Disclosure. Like I didn't know what the hell I was doing.
But that's so normal. Like most investors buy the wrong asset in the wrong area at the wrong time. Like it's far more normal to do that. But
all of them were the wrong assets.
Knowing what we know now, it obviously makes sense to create that plan, create that strategy, surround yourself with the right people. But in Australia, it's a birthright to buy property. So it's so normal for anybody to go out there and just buy something. And people love to stick in their comfort zone. So what are you going to do? You're going to buy in your backyard, and nobody looks into timing or assets. Like, what is the difference of buying a unit versus a house? Or what is the difference between buying in like a major metro market or closer by the beach or versus, somewhere further from the city or in regional towns or something like that? You just don't know in the very beginning, which is, tough because you don't really have that team of advisors. Most people don't really have that community to lean on yet. And with the tall poppy syndrome in Australia, it's bloody hard to find them.
I just got a message off one of my best mates this morning, and he's like, I sat down last night, looked at my net position, and he's like, I'm a millionaire now, man.
Yeah, boy.
And I was just like, fuck yeah, dude. It's like that tall poppy thing is so relevant to who you spend your time with.
Yeah.
And so like I choose to surround myself now with people that are just fully supportive. Like I was looking at one of the quotes that you put on that like we plan on putting on Instagram in the next month, and it was just exactly that. It was like surround yourself with like-minded people. I don't want to surround myself with like just hustlers and people that are moving forward and stuff like that. Like I want to surround myself with values-based people that are balanced. Great quality, that are balanced, that are kind of like trying to do what Simon and I are looking to do, which is get successful and create a passive income, but have a freaking ball getting there and have good relationships and good health and great partners and good families. And it's like, that's a different way of looking at success rather than just like a perfect body or just money in the bank or just a good business or just a good relationship. I really love like the Laird Hamilton version, which is like, it's 360, and without each of those things in your life working for you, you sometimes can feel like there's something missing.
Yeah, and that's what I guess, we're trying to get at in this podcast as well, that like you can have fun throughout the journey if you make the right decisions from the beginning. And I was fortunate enough to like buy my first property whilst working as a buyer's agent. So I knew the fundamentals. I knew how to create a strategy. I got easy, fast access to all amazing partners like Paul or Aaron, the mortgage brokers.
And
Hannah, the accountant.
I wish I owned your first and second and third properties. Like they're all so
and
good.
Fourth.
And fourth now. Yeah.
It's great, but not everybody has that. But I think you should make it a goal to go out there and find that, because you know the first 7 years or the first 7 properties that you bought were probably you're probably in a sticky position within yourself, in your gut, going, I don't know what I'm doing here, so I'm just going to keep doing it.
I thought I knew, man. I thought I had it all figured out until I spent like 2 years really learning, and then I went,
okay,
oh, fuck, like, you know.
It happens, eh?
You know, luckily, like 5 or 6 of the 7 ended up doing all right. You know, what I will say to people is, strategically, it is so simple. So just get out of your own way. I'm spilling my tea all over myself.
That's all right.
Step 1 is identify where you are right now and be honest with that. Like, you know, you might have a property that you own or a couple of properties you own, and you've got some equity in them, which would enable you to make another step. Or maybe you're like starting where Simon and I did, which was from absolutely nothing and going, cool, I've got to like spend the next year or 2 saving a deposit.
Yeah.
And that's the only step that you need to know. And then the second step there is, well, what can I borrow? And you can find that out on an online calculator, talking to a bank, or finding a good mortgage broker.
And you can talk to a few different people. You know, if your parents or, you know, uncle or auntie have a good relationship with a bank manager, have a chat with them, you know, or go out and reach out to a mortgage broker. Just understand, you know, what type of questions you should be asking the brokers. And, you know, you don't have to actually engage in a relationship with them. You just want to get that information so you can put yourself on the right path. I was having this chat with Ryan the other day. We actually filmed a video on it, and he's like, oh, well, this is where I'm at. And I'm like, have you talked to a mortgage broker yet? And he's like, no. And I'm like, well, what's your savings goal? And he goes, oh, well, I just was hoping to get to like $70,000. And I'm like, well, if you talk to a mortgage broker, then you're going to know the exact amount of money that you need to save for, because they can look at your position and go, cool, you're earning X amount of dollars per year. You've got X amount of debt. This is how much savings that you're going to need to purchase a property at $500,000. And it's just like, that's a clear goal.
Exactly.
And then you can set up your budget. You can set up your weekly recurring.
Sorry, man.
That's all right. Bless you.
That's not getting.
He's got the Rona.
I've got the Rona.
And then you set up your recurring payments, and it's just one less thing to think about.
Exactly, man. And so once you know where you are, the second step is to know where you want to be. Now, for me, that is 2 things, and 2 simple things. The first is I just literally shut my eyes. I was in the surf with one of my best mates, Josho, the other week. He's doing really well, like at the high level of pharmaceutical industry at the moment. And we always laugh about that for him, because it's like he hates it, but he's earning too much money and it's too easy to leave. But he's like sitting in the surf and he's like, man, can you believe where you're at after 11 years of doing this? I'm like, 100%. Like, and he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, I knew exactly where I'd be. I just had no idea how the hell I was going to get there. But I shut my eyes 10, 11 years ago and went, I want a great relationship with my wife. Like, I want to be a really present dad. Like, I knew I wanted a business. I just didn't know what I'd be passionate enough about to stick in it for the 5 or 6 years, to do it over and over again, to make it successful.
Yeah.
You know, I knew I wanted to have a full life with like friends and not go through that like 30 stage where like a lot of people just start drifting a lot. I wanted to like have a position like financially where even outside of my business, I had choices in the future, which was what property was all about. And I said to him, like, I could see it so clearly. So I want everyone that's listening to this that doesn't have a vision for their future to like legitimately either stop this right now and do it, or do it tonight or over the weekend. And whether that's with a glass of wine or a beer or a juice or a cup of tea, like I do it, just put down a wish list and just start writing what you'd like your life to look like. And so little people do this, but it's crazy when you know what you're going for. And maybe it's just as simple as this. Like, I want to replace my current annual salary in 15 years and have the choice to do what I want to do at that time. Yeah. And that's all my goal was at that point.
Yeah. And maybe it's more, and that's fine. But, you got to do the work, right? And I love that so much. I think it's such a good exercise, and we've been practicing it for such a long time, and just giving yourself the time to think about the life that you want for yourself. Like, we are so privileged to be living here in Australia and have the opportunity that we have. So make the most of it, and sit down, have those really deep conversations. It's funny because I was chatting to one of my really good mates, Tristan, the other day, and we're talking about, different business ideas, and I'm talking about my life and where I'm at, and what my goals are moving forward. And it's just like, yeah, but you've got so much more potential. Like, why don't you push it further? Why don't you want to do this? And I'm like, because when do you stop pushing? Like, what is the point? What is the purpose of continually pushing? And I've done what you've done so many times, sat down and thought about what my ideal life looks like. And it's very similar, having great relationships with family and friends, having time to do the things that I enjoy doing, like surfing, like yoga, like, going on adventures and holidays and things like that. Having that freedom to do those little things. And I'm like, if I want that, all I really need is, a 6-figure gross income. I mean, net income every single year, just about 100 grand every single year. And that's going to give me all of those choices. So now I've built the portfolio, I've moved through this accumulation phase and sliding into the next phase that we'll start talking about. But when he pushes me and goes, why aren't you trying to do more? It's because I know that more isn't going to make me happy. What's going to make me happy is executing the plan that I've created for myself, that I've followed methodically for the last 4 years.
Yep.
And get those choices, because the only thing that more is going to do is make my ego even bigger than it already is, which is not necessary.
This guy's got a big ego.
And it's
What's that
just
like
like
voice quote?
feeding.
No, that's just
and it's just feeding the greed, and it's just like, I don't need that. Like, the life that I want doesn't need any of that. So it's just really cool to sit back and actually have a good think about what sort of life that it is that you want. And hey, if you want to be a billionaire, then that's in your right, and go out there and do it.
All you have to do is work 100 hours a week for the next 30 years, 7 days a week, and you can do it. It's like the model is that. But I will say something, man, because I've been going back and forth with my psychologist about this. I see him about once a fortnight to once a month just to check in, mainly just talk about business stuff, to be honest.
Nice.
But he said, what was happening in that conversation with like Tristan is he's at a different stage of his journey than you are. And I didn't get this, but it's like I understand it in other parts of my life, and I now understand it. It's like somebody who's at the very, very, very earliest stage of their journey can only see pushing, can only see upward. Why wouldn't you go more?
Which is good for him.
It's where he needs to be, because he's just starting out. But it's like for you and for other people listening to this, when you get to a point where you figure out what your enough point is for this stage, and we'll talk about this more in part 4, because there's multiple life cycles in creating wealth, and we're just talking about the first stage at the moment. But you get to a point where you're like, you're doing your life's work right now. You're having a meaningful impact on people. You're earning good money, and you're investing 70% of that money. It's like, it's very difficult for someone on the way up to see somebody there. And I was listening to this fucking epic mini doco yesterday on J. Cole, who's like one of the most successful rappers in America. And he was saying exactly that. Like, for everybody, you've got to make that decision point. And a lot of people can't understand, like, when people hit enough, that's just not a word that people use in Western society. It's just like always more, especially for people that haven't started or got anything yet, because there's only more from where they're at. And I'm like, now that I recognize that, I have conversations with people that get enough, or I just talk about specific things with people that are just on that stage of the journey, and I understand their worldview and where they're coming from now. Yeah,
it's so true when you say it. And I was kind of thinking about that, and did mention to him, like, look, man, you got to understand that, like, I've done the groundwork and hustled away, and maybe in the future, which we'll talk about more in part 4, maybe once I get to that, I'll loop around, as you said, and find a bit more fuel for the fire and
you've
go
crushed
again.
it now, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but right now I don't need to do that because I know it's not going to make me happier. So it's just about like happiness to me is everything. So that's like the benchmark that I try and set all of these goals.
You know, let's talk about that for a sec, because I feel like the only option that most people have in this world, like that we live in, is the more concept. And when you start talking to people like about legitimate happiness and having enough, and like I think about it as going internally. Like I was reading this book that one of our previous clients from London, Greg, gave me the other day, and it was about this concept of like I call it the Gatsby light, like that constantly striving for something that's just out of your reach. And I did it so well, so like as good as anyone's ever done it for the last 10 years. It's like kick the can down the road, next goal, next goal, next goal. Achieved 40 goals this year, but I had 42, so it's a failure year. Like just like whip.
Yeah,
And
it's tails out.
it's like just
They don't like you, don't
brutal.
like it.
It's like if you could see like the scars on my back from my mind. But it's
I'm
like,
glad we can laugh about it now. But they're legit.
it's so funny, man. It's like it's just like if people like that get somewhere quickly are normally pretty hard on themselves.
Yeah.
And it's just like when you get to the point where it's like enough's enough. And in this book, it sort of said like this Gatsby light or this chasing is almost just strong enough for most people in their lives to continue with that as like that is my reason for being. And then for those lucky few people that get to financial freedom or
self-actualization, I would call it.
Yeah, like they pull the curtain back and realize that there's no great Oz. It's just some dude tweaking shit.
It's the Truman Show.
And it's like, oh, paying off my home, finishing uni, buying that car, you know, creating getting financially free doesn't actually make me feel better. And then for those lucky people that go, okay, well, instead of more, like, and getting back on the same journey of like how much more is going to make me happy, it's like going within and like meditating and figuring out what you really want and letting go of like all the stuff. And there's this epic Beatles song or John Lennon song. It's like, I'm just watching the wheels go round and round. Like what he's referring to is he's completely off like what's expected and just in the moment present doing him, because he's realized like he doesn't need more than $500 million to be happy. You know what I mean?
Oh, dude, 100%. I know exactly what you mean. And it's just so contrary to what we've been taught to believe. And, you know, talking about these concepts, sometimes people think it's just like la-di-da, you know, up with the fairies, whatever. But it's legitimate, you know. When
half the time I think, like when I'm talking it, it's like I don't know what I'm talking about.
It's still a little bit hard to talk about, but it's so legitimate to like manifestation and meditation. All of these things are real. Just, you know, don't knock it till you try it, I guess, and see how powerful it can actually be.
You know, I wish someone had said to me, but I wouldn't have listened on my journey up, like that. Hey, it might not be quite what you expect it to be. So it's like the second part of setting a goal isn't just the vision, but it's also going, well, specifically, what do you want? And I'm very, very good at this. And everyone that achieves goals is as well. And that's going, I want, for me, $200,000 a year of passive income from property in 15 years. And that's from rental income, not equity.
Yeah.
And so that's my big goal. And then I go straight back from a goal setting perspective, which is part of accumulation phase of going, what is my next 12 months look like? What do I need to do? And what is my next step that I need to focus on? So for me, my next step is pretty dull. It's just paying off debt this year.
Yeah.
And then by doing that, it'll link me to my 15-year goal. And that's really all I have to do right now.
But if you had your first home, or you're living in your home already, or maybe have a couple investment properties and you're, you know, continuing the accumulation phase, it's just, okay, well, what asset is missing in this portfolio that's going to help me get to where I want to be? And then you learn about how to buy that asset the best possible way, and you go out there and buy it, and then, you know, you rinse and repeat, and that's what you've been doing for the last 10 years. What I've been doing for the last 4 years is just understanding the big picture, but not living in the big picture, just focusing on that one next thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how simple the accumulation phase is. Like, it's not super difficult, but what I also wanted to talk about in that accumulation phase is what you also want to do is build your team and build your skills. Like not just buy properties, but build the foundations for your financial future. And that is in every sense of the word. You need a great mortgage broker. You need a great accountant. You need a great property expert. You need awesome property managers, town planners, solicitors, all of these people in your back pocket, because now whenever I'm ready to make a decision, I just call my team of advisors and go, this is my next step. Are you ready to support me? Whether that's setting up a trust to buy another property, whether it's talking to a town planner about a potential property and whether or not it meets my goals and my criteria. You need to find that team, which can be really challenging. And fortunately for us, because we've now bought, what is it, close to 1,000 properties almost?
Yeah, 800-ish.
800-ish. We've been able to fast track that. We've been able to fast track that team of advisors, which every single person that we work with gets, immediate access to that team of advisors. But it's just asking the right questions and, being brutal when the relationship isn't working the way that you want it to.
Yeah, like I've had, I think, 11 different brokers and bank managers, like 6 different solicitors, a bunch of planners, a bunch of builders. Like you just move forward and find people that value align, that are also very, very good at what they do. And realistically, accumulation comes down to saving money, being in a position to borrow money, and then buying stuff. And for me, accumulation can be as simple as, if I want to get to 100 grand a year in 15 years of income, one option could be to buy a couple of houses that rent for $800 each a week today. And then with a 2.5% increase in the rent per year over 15 years, they'll both rent for over $1,000 a week. $1,000 a week times 2 is $2 grand, times 50 is 100K. 100 grand a year. It doesn't have to be harder than that.
Or, $400 per week properties.
Exactly.
Like it's as simple as that. Or, there is unique strategies as well where you can potentially increase the cash flow and things like that too. So there's so many different ways to do it, but it's just, as you said, reverse engineering the future goal to the rental income that you need today, factoring in a bit of inflation.
Without a doubt. So let's move on to the second phase, which...
One thing that I did want to talk on before we do move on to that is like the skills that you're going to build and the knowledge that you're going to build throughout the accumulation phase, because it's taken you 10 years. It's taken me, fortunately, 4 years. Well, me and my partner. I wouldn't say that I've done it alone. I can't say that I've done it alone. But the shit that I've learned over the last 4 years is just insane.
Incredible.
So like you take that forward with you throughout these other phases in your journey as well, and just recognize that even if you are just starting to save your deposit now, or even if you're just about to buy your first investment property, what you know now versus what you're going to know after you've completed the accumulation phase is like complete opposites.
I remember there's this quote that I used to listen to when I was running by Jim Rohn, and he's like, become a millionaire. Or he said, everyone should become a millionaire, which I agree with. Like, why not?
Why not?
It's like, and that's what he says too. Like, why not become one? It's like, not to become a millionaire, but for the person that you have to become to become a millionaire, if you know what I mean. It's like, there's skills and knowledge that you build and character that you just can't get without grit, that you can't get without being in the game, that you can't get without putting in the reps and practicing. Like on the way to school this morning with the kids, I drop them off most days, which is an incredible part of the next phase we're going to talk about in a sec, consolidation. But I was saying, like, they were talking about this little boy at school that read really well. And I'm like, do you know why? And my daughter in year 3 is just like, I know why. And I'm like, why? And she's like, because he's practiced more than me.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, Harper, you want to be great at guitar? Practice. Like, you want to be a great cook? You want to be like whatever? Like, you want to be a better runner? You want to win races? Like, you want to start a business, or you just want anything in your life? It's just the only difference between someone that's there and someone that isn't is where they focus their attention and how long they've been doing it for consistently.
Yeah, luck doesn't necessarily come into it very often, you know.
Yeah.
Well, it's a tough one.
I know where you're going.
Yeah, I'm like, oh shit,
Because you're
this
thinking
could
of
go both
outliers.
ways. But you know, there is a degree of luck. But at
Being
the
born
same
in
time,
Australia is lucky.
exactly. You know, being born in Australia is lucky. You know, having a father that ran a business for most of my life is lucky.
Yeah.
Compared to the average person, because you learn different things at a different age. You know,
The dinner table conversations are
what you're
different.
telling the kids, like if they want to be better than someone at something, or if they want to be really good at something, then you've got to practice. Like it's as simple as that. But most parents, I can't imagine, are telling their kids those types of things. But I don't know. I don't talk to parents except you guys.
I don't talk to parents about parenting either.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to figure it out the same as every other parent in the world.
Yeah, exactly. But it's work, right? It's putting in the reps. It's doing the reps. You know, LeBron James didn't become the best basketball player because he's lucky. You know, Michael Jordan didn't become the best or the GOAT because he's lucky. Like these guys work their ass off way more than the average person. You know, first to come, last to leave mentality.
I was thinking about basketball this morning and I was like,
no wonder Brad's so good at partying.
Yeah, he's just partying more than everyone else.
Sorry.
So yeah, like I suppose like sliding from there, accumulation phase is how far you want to take it. And
Yeah.
you decide for your own life what's going to make you happy and give you the choices that you want. I've got some clients who are working with that just want 50K.
Yep.
And that is completely cool for retirement in 25 years. I've got other clients like Ben that we're working with at the moment, or Chris, that are like, I want 500K worth of passive income from property within 10 years from today. I'm like, cool. Like your journey's 10 properties. Hermit's property journey is just one. Like she just needs one to get financially free in retirement.
I talk to some people that just love what they do. You know, I think we're working with this couple that are the priest.
Oh yeah,
Cameron.
Ledge.
You know, like just super happy with what he's doing. Not trying to run away from work. Loves the life that he's created.
Yeah, 25 years he says he wants to continue to help people for.
Yeah, and all he's trying to do is the same thing, 50K per year, and you know he's there basically in like over that 25 year. But it's just everyone's different, right? That's what we're trying to say. Everyone's different. So the first thing that we said is sit down, have your beer, have your wine, have your tea, have your juice, coffee, whatever your poison is, and you know, sit down with yourself for a little bit, or your wife, and then or partner, and figure out where it is that you want to be.
So then we move to second stage, consolidation, which, you know, is really about, to me, paying off the debt. Now, I also think, you know, before we get to that and how you do that, you know, there's a fast way to pay off debt and there's a slow way. And that's cool as well. But it's like, really, consolidation is where you get the choice. Now, Ryan from On Property speaks to this way better than we do, but he says that it's really the choice at that phase. If you've bought the properties like Simon's bought now that are going to set him up to be where he wants to be in 20 years or 5 years or whatever you decide is your time frame, it's really a choice from what you do at that point. Now, you sometimes do have to earn a decent income when you're buying the properties, and you know, you also want to be earning an income if markets change and, you know, prices come up and down. Like last year, a tenant in both of our properties just bailed in the coronavirus. Like
interest rates coming,
interest rates go up. You know, I started out at 8% interest rates and now I've got rates as low as 2.9. It's like things change and you've got to be aware of that. But theoretically, if you're not enjoying what you're doing, you don't have to stick it out for the next 15 to 30 years and keep smashing away at it like so many people think they do. Like you can change. Like we're not trees. Like you can move and you can, you know, go retrain. You can start another career. You can take a punt at that business, because once you've got the properties in your portfolio like Simon and I do, that long term will make us free financially. It's like, well, I'm going to be there anyway. So what do I want to do between now and then?
Yeah.
Or, as Ryan says better than I will as well, you can continue doing what you're doing now, because I enjoy what I'm doing. I'm not trying to run away from it like I was a few years ago when I set this goal. It's, you know, when you find passion in your life, or you start looking for the joy in your life and what you're doing, like, you know, I'm just going to keep doing this. But I'm not doing it to buy more stuff. I'm just doing it because it's like what I want to be doing.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, the consolidation phase is going to be different for a lot of people because, like, I consider myself, I've finished the accumulation phase and I'm moving into consolidation, but I've still got work to do during the consolidation phase.
Sorry, that's a good point. I jumped the queue there.
Yeah, because I need to, like, in one of my properties, I need to build a granny flat. On two of my properties, I need to knock them down and rebuild, and that's more debt that I'm going to be taking on. So I'm going to need to, continue doing my thing to make sure I can service that debt.
Yeah.
Fortunately, if you do it right, you may be able to leverage off some equity, but you still need to be able to look attractive to the banks. I'm considering that a part of my consolidation. You could consider it a part of the accumulation. You kind of did it throughout the accumulation phase, but I went for the properties first. It varies from strategy to strategy.
100%.
So, you've got to get the properties to the point where they're set for the future. So they're set for whatever you need them to do, which as Ben was saying, 200K for me, 100K net, get them to that point, and then you've got these choices to do whatever it is that you want to do. And if you have them set up, you should probably have a decent some decent positive cash flow coming through as well.
I love that, man. So that's really important because you're right. Like when I finished accumulating, which is buying the 4 houses I own, then I went and renovated them and built granny flats on them, or I knocked them over and rebuilt houses. And then the next thing I went and did was I went to my broker and I went and got the best possible rates I could absolutely get to make the holding those property costs as low as possible. Then I went to my property manager and I said, this is my goal, cash flow wise, on every property. And at the start of every January, I sent her that email before I start the year of work. And I'm like, this is my goal by the end of the year of when the leases come up, I want them to be. And I've only started to do that in the last 2 years, but all of a sudden I'm getting like $500 a week in extra freaking cash flow. And I'm like, fuck, what if I had have told her what I wanted at the start of every year?
Sometimes you just get too complacent and nice.
Fully. I was just like, oh, she'll do the job. And I'm like, hang on, it's my responsibility to manage my managers.
Yeah, they're your properties,
Yeah, they're my properties. And then the next thing that I decided to do was exactly what I did in stage 1 of accumulation and went, okay, I've now got theoretically enough gross income in 15 years to get to where I want to be. What is my goal for this year? And then it was for me to just start paying off debt. But then when I went and talked to my accountant, one way of paying off debt is just I'll pay principal and interest off the property. Actually, let's talk to this before I jump ahead again. There's a bunch of different ways to pay off properties. Now, the simplest way is principal and interest, which means if you're on a 30-year term, in 30 years' time, you loan it outright.
And this is the slow way that Ben was talking about. Once you've got the property set, once you've refinanced them, you've switched them over to P&I, this is where you're like, cool, worst case scenario, 30 years from now, I'm going to own these assets outright. I'm going to be financially free. So you've got that clear target, and then you can go, cool, well, if you currently don't enjoy the work that you're doing or the life that you're living, you've got that freedom to choose to start the business or go volunteer or, take 6 or 12 months off or, switch careers, learn something new. That's where you can do that, knowing that worst case scenario is best case scenario. It's just a little bit longer. Or you have this conversation with your advisors and they're like, okay, well, here's some unique ideas that we could maybe implement.
That's so true, man. Like we forgot to say that at the start, but it takes longer than expected. I thought I would have done this 5 years ago, like when my 24-year-old brain set my goals, but it's going to take me 15 to 20 years and I'm so down with that.
Yeah, it's
not
cool.
a sprint. But paying off debt, principal and interest is one nice way to do it. And talk to your accountants, talk to your financial advisors about this. I'm talking about people that feel like they've got enough. Most accountants and financial advisors aren't ever going to say that you have enough. But it's like, if you feel like you do, then that's one way. The other thing that I do is I pay a little bit more each week off the properties than I need to. Now,
well, the good thing is when you get to consolidation is you're no longer saving to buy more properties. So that extra savings you can park back against the property.
So let's say you've been saving $500 a week for the last 2 years to achieve your goal. And you've been like doing what Simon and I did, which is cutting certain parts of your lifestyle back a little bit.
Yeah.
And then it's like, cool, I was saving 500. Now I'd just like to put $300 a week of that away to pay off debt, or $100 a week. So let's say you just pay a little bit a week off the property. into either offset account or directly off the mortgage, depending on the advice you receive from your accountant. Another way to do it is in Australia at the moment. Now, this could change in the future, but you get some pretty kick-ass tax advantages from having property. So instead of spending that, like, let's say I get $2,000 to $10,000 back on a property as a lump sum at the end of the tax year, I just put it straight off the debt on the property personally. Other people spend it on holidays and cars, but I'm just have been in the habit since day one of pretending that's not my money and just paying off debt.
Nice.
Or when I was accumulating, saving that towards the next place that I wanted to buy.
So it's just basically taking all of the profits from the property plus some additional saving and parking it back against that asset.
Exactly. Now, one of the other little things that we do that is simple like that, as we get surplus rent. So let's say that you've got a property that you owe 300 grand on, that's renting for $700 a week. After all of your costs, you might be getting a passive income each week of $200. Instead of spending that money, which is so easy to do. Like I remember I used to physically go and pick up the cash from my first property and there was passive income there in an envelope. And then I would go straight to Northies at Cronulla with my mates and spend I would not leave Northies until the entire packet was empty. And that was every Friday night for the first 6 months.
That's so
property.
good, eh?
That was so fun, man. Every Friday I'd just be straight to my mate's house. He had this dodgy bar he set up called the Library. And we'd just like bottle it up, smash beers with all the boys and then go straight out.
Such a little pad there.
And it was like, that's what I did. But if you're not a dumbass like I was and you actually want to get early 20s,
some people in their early 20s do that sort of shit, but it happens. But it can be like, man. I guess what you got to think about in this phase, like how soon do you want to move on to the next phase, which is freedom? You know, how quickly do you want to be financially free? And it's like if you're willing to continue to sacrifice and work hard and put the $500 a week plus put every single bit of extra cash that you get from that property back against it, you're going to speed up that 30-year journey a hell of a lot and probably bring that down to like 15 maybe, which is epic. Or then, you know, there's even more unique ways, which is taking it to another level, which is just continuing investing in assets, which means you've got to continue to like grind away because you've got to earn the income to service the loans. But, you know, you can invest in stocks, you know, crypto, more properties, you know, using the skills that you learned throughout the accumulation phase to then create some shorter term cash and then using that to pay off the debt, or, you know, starting that business if you got that kind of mentality or you got that kind of work ethic in you to grind it out and get a successful business and then use the profits from the business to pay off the debt as well. Like there is so many different ways to do it. But basically, once you get to the consolidation phase, it's kind of doing the same thing that you did at the beginning of the accumulation, which is sitting down with yourself and going, cool, well, how quickly do I want to be financially free and how much am I willing to sacrifice to actually achieve that? And then create a plan as to what you want to be doing throughout this phase.
I love that, man. You know, like sacrifice is part of it, but I look back now and I'm like, I really did enjoy every step of the journey. Like I really enjoyed
I have to date
the first, like the little 3-bedroom granny flat home that my wife and I bought. Like I loved doing it up. Like I loved living there. Like, you know, I couldn't see how things would be different than that at that time. And it's like, that's a full choice that people can make. Like just being present, enjoying, saying yes to things. Like I know there's this FIRE movement, which I just can't get my head around. It's like, let's delay every single part of our life until we get free so that we can be free. And it's like, man, but what happens when you're free, or what happens if you lose it on the way? It's like, I just want people to know that all the way through you can enjoy this. And, you know, that moves us to the third phase. So first phase was accumulating the assets. The second phase is paying them off. The third phase is when you actually get there. Now, I don't know what this feels like yet because I'm still working towards it.
So it's talking out of turn a little bit here, but it's freedom.
It's freedom. It's deciding how you want to spend your time, and you can continue to do exactly what you're doing right now, I assume, or you can decide to completely change it up at that point. Now, we know people that have done both. We know people that have radically changed their life once they've got there. And we know people that are doing the exact same thing right now.
Yeah, like everything that I'm doing at the moment is working towards that. And I'm personally not setting any longer term goals than when I'm expecting to be at that point where I'm free. because I have no idea what my life is going to look like. I don't know if I'm going to want to just do nothing. I can't imagine that's going to be something that I do, because after I've had 2 weeks off, I start pulling my hair out. But, you know, I don't know what I want. So I'm not setting those like longer term goals. I'm just working towards, you know, finish the accumulation phase, sorting out the consolidation phase, and then once I'm free, having you know, the ability to choose what I want to do. Maybe it's starting businesses, maybe it's, you know, moving into different asset classes, which I guess we'll get to in the 4th phase of the investment journey. But yeah, part 3 is 100% up to you.
And what I love about what you just said, man, is people think people that are doing stuff have it figured out. We don't. You
No.
don't. Like, you
No.
don't have to have it all figured out. You don't need to know what comes next after your next step. If you're just saving and that's the only thing you need to do right now,
Just save.
And
that's how you enjoy the journey.
It's how you enjoy it.
Like, if you're just focusing on the next step, it's how you enjoy the journey, because you're not, you know, constantly chasing the blue light or the green light in the distance. You're, you know, living in the moment, doing everything that you need to be doing to continue moving forward. Sorry.
You know, I love that, because it's a complete choice. Like, you can stop and smell the roses, as they say, all the way through, or you can just. We talk to people that are both, and I was definitely the second, which was just, this will make me happy. You know, focus, future, and it does get you there. But it's also like, I say that I really enjoyed the journey too, but it's like I feel like I traded a little bit too much on the journey at some parts on the way through, in terms of mental health and just being present. And so it's nice to step back into the moment and go, like, this is it. Let's enjoy the day, and the future's taking care of itself.
Yeah.
But it's also nice to know that what your next step is and what you need to do today to get to the tomorrow you want.
Exactly. And then we sort of move into the 4th phase, which is something we haven't really talked about too much on the channel yet, which is wealth, which we were sort of just talking about this the other day, because both you and I have been talking about what we do after and, you know, what sort of things that we want to do. But wealth is just kind of moving on to the next phase of the journey, because, you know, you're likely going to be financially free before 40, realistically. I'm likely going to be financially free before 35 as well. And it's like, there's a hell of a lot more living to go from there. So it's kind of moving on to that next phase, because, you know, once you get to that level, once I get to my level, you know, I'm assuming once I'm completely financially free, I'm going to have millions of dollars of assets owned completely outright, with over $100,000 worth of net income per year. And it's like, that's going to open up a hell of a lot of opportunity for me to continue investing. And I love it so much that there's no way that once I'm free, I'm going to stop investing.
Without a doubt. So, you know, the wealth phase is kind of interesting one, because, again, referring back to that J. Cole little mini series that I watched, it was kind of like he became very, very, very good, like best in world in the rap game, and like had the choice to do whatever he wanted to do. And a lot of people at that phase choose to just sit back, coast, and that's where their career sort of starts and ends, really. But then there's like unique players in the game that, you know, want to continue to build. Like, it's not that they want to continue, it's just more like it's not over. Like, at 35, Simon's going to have unlimited choices, and he's productive and he's got skills. And so what he said in the documentary is what I was trying to convert to my kids this morning. It's like, you can just sit back on a beach forever, and that's completely cool. But for me, like, I've spent a lot of my life on beaches. Like, when I was at uni was so freaking easy for me, because I was taking 3 classes a semester, 2 semesters a year, and legitimately having like 16 to 20 weeks a year, just cruising, living with all the boys and doing nothing. And I hardly put in effort in my classes, because that's the stage of life I was at back then.
Yeah, and you didn't need to.
And I didn't need to. Like, luckily, uni was like Sunshine Coast Uni, and Wollongong Uni wasn't too bad. But it's like, if I was going back to uni now, I'd put in more effort, because I'd want to get more out of it. But at that time, that was enough. And it was like, I sort of sat on the beach already for 4 years.
Sure.
And it was heaps of fun, but there was this like, hey, I'm not fulfilling my potential, and I'm also not contributing to the world in the most meaningful way for me personally. And I wanted more. And I'm almost at that same point again now. It's like I love my business and my life, and it's like it could be very easy now to just sort of continue to do what we're doing, like to cut off the content, to massively reduce the number of people that we take on each month. But I'm so invigorated again. I want to do better stuff. I want to have more meaningful conversations with you guys listening to this. Like, I want to continue on, but by continuing on, it creates income. So for people that are lucky enough to like choose or find passion or just have it thrust upon them, it's like, if you're going to keep earning money and you've got no debt and you've got good assets, then wealth becomes an option for you.
Yeah. And I think one thing that we've realized from the deep work that we've done with Zach and through meditation is that purpose is so important.
Yeah.
Probably one of the most important things for longevity.
Fully.
Because you need to be adding value to either your own life or other people's lives to feel as though that you are living to your fullest potential. Because when you're not, that's where those mental health issues seep in, and things can get pretty sketchy, especially for people like you and I that have a very active mind and like are constantly on.
Yeah.
You need to have those that purpose to kind of relate to and to let go and to do. That's not the right word, not let go, just to continue doing something, because the sitting on the beach isn't fulfilling our purpose. It's not fulfilling our goals. And one thing I've realized is, the skills that I've learned, the knowledge that I've gained over the last probably 8 years since I started uni has just been insane. And it would be a disservice to myself and the world to not do something more with that.
Without a doubt.
And that's continuing the podcast for sure. And, continuing to do different things, which I'm not 100% sure what that is, but there's definitely going to be some ideas out there.
Like one of the cool things that we're doing is partnering at the moment with a charity company like Charity Water. And so like my big goal at the moment, as weird as this is to say, is like, if we do good in the business, then for each good that we do, like for each slab that goes down for a granny flat or a house or each new client, I think we've decided to give $200. And so like in June this year, just before the end of the financial year, we should be able to like give a decent little amount of money to this company that, for every $40 we give creates water for life for someone. And I'm like, that's the shit that I always wanted to do, that like getting to that phase. Like, again, I'm still in consolidation. Like, I'm getting ahead of myself here. Like, I haven't hit freedom and I'm definitely not wealth yet.
But we talked about this in consolidation. You get the choice in consolidation. You get the choice to incorporate these types of things as well. So,
by giving that money away, we could probably pay off our properties faster. Like Simon and I both get distributions of some of the profits out of the business, but it's like it's a choice to like give back even on the journey, not just at the end of the journey. And so wealth to me is like a business that I'm enjoying doing. It
adds value to people's lives.
Property, because I don't know what it is. I just get it and it makes sense to me, and it's easy, and people need a place to live, and it's consistently done well all over the world except Japan in the last 30 years. And even Japan got speculation with the Olympics in Tokyo.
Yeah, it did.
It's like, and then from a diversification perspective, because I have read a lot of Buffett stuff and Ray Dalio stuff now and Tony Robbins stuff, and I do want to be diversified. So that means like with my super, what I'm doing for me, which this is not financial advice, this is just the shit that I've read from those guys, plus Barefoot, Phil Anderson, Fred Harrison, is I want diversified super, emerging markets, European markets, Australian markets, American markets in stocks. And I don't know what the fuck I'm doing there, but I'm figuring it out slowly, and it'll take me a while to do that. And then I'm going to do the same with some shares, because there'll come a point where I've got a little bit of extra income coming in each week.
Yeah.
I'm just going to go low cost index funds, long-term hold. I don't know if that's the right thing to do. I know there'd be a lot of smarter people listening to this, but I'm like, that's what Tony Robbins said.
And you're only at the very beginning of that journey too. So like,
that's all I'm going to do there. Like, that's easy.
Start small and then see where it goes. And yeah, for myself, like, right now focusing heavily on Australian property, but I have, ideas that I might want to, look at the United States in the future to invest over there potentially. And, just look at different asset classes and things like this. And as you said, diversification as well, just to number one, force myself to continually learn new markets, new assets, and new areas, and how to maneuver through them, like we have done for Australian real estate, and just see what happens at that point in time as well.
I think wealth is more to do with legacy than anything else. It's like, cool. It's like if you can create enough through financial freedom to just look after yourself and your base living costs, that's cool. But it's like, well, what would my life look like if I could actually in my lifetime own 4 houses and give 1.3 to each of my kids outright with an income at that time? Like, what would their life look like in the future, and how nice would it be for them at, I don't know, like, I hope to live to 100, so sorry kids, you're not going to get the property support in time, but it's like, how can I help them? And like, that's a nice thing to be able to do. Like Lisa, my wife, grew up with parents that were like, for every dollar you save on a car, we'll match it. It's like, I want to be able to do that. Like, I can't do that right now, but if I like slowly keep investing for the next 10 years, maybe I'll be able to do that. Like, what would it look like if I said, hey, for every dollar that you save from 15 for your first home, I'll match it as a deposit? Like, that's an incredibly beautiful thing to be able to do. Like, people, and a lot of people say that like creating financial freedom is selfish, or people with money are bad, but I'm like, the more you have, the more you have to give.
I love that so much, bro.
It's like, that's where it comes from. It's like, this business, we could easily run the business on 3 to 4 clients a month and just cruise and work 1 day a week. But it's like, I feel like from a service perspective, I wouldn't be doing my life's work. And so we help young people come in. We help people that are in their 30s and 40s that are going through that really intense stage of like, I've got to get it together. Kids, businesses, like dad or mum is stuck in a job that they may or may not like just to keep a roof over their heads. And then it's like, and then we help these legends who are like 45 to 60 that are like, I just want to get sorted for retirement, like people like my mum. And it's like, it feels nice to be able to do that. And that's why this is important. It's not about the cash, but the cash helps create choices, and the choices enable you to live in line with who you're supposed to be without the constant fear of losing a job or not having enough money at the end of the week, which unfortunately too many people go through every week.
Metaphorical mic drop.
Boom.
That was epic, dude. I think that's an awesome way to just wrap things up as well, because, we're living proof that you can enjoy the journey whilst living it. And I just think it's important to think big picture about, why you're doing all of this stuff for every single phase of your investment journey. But just the number one thing that we want for every single person listening is that you need to sacrifice, but you don't need to sacrifice your joy and happiness throughout this journey to still become successful. You just need to, create the right plan, surround yourself with the right people, and make the right decisions. And then the forest will easily appear and you can just navigate through it so much easier.
I love it, man. Thank you so much for everyone listening to this. Like, you're literally the reason why we get out of bed in the morning. Like, I get so excited to do this stuff and to contribute, and I just can't wait to like be a part of your journey in the future whenever that time's right for you to reach out. Hopefully at that point we've got some capacity and can help you, and we wish you all the best. Please share this with someone that needs to hear it. Please like it, give it a 5-star review if you're listening to it on the podcast, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on Insta?
Yeah, follow us on Insta, like us on Facebook.
Do the thing. And like on each channel, we do completely different stuff each week. So you can get just some different ideas and listen when you want to listen, unfollow us when you want to unfollow us, and do your thing.
Yeah, thanks so much for tuning in, guys. And next week.
And
until next week. Until next week.
Sign off.
Oh, sweaty. So sweaty.